Sarah Porter lived in a small town in Ohio. Every morning, she sat by her window with a cup of coffee and wondered if her life would ever change. Sarah worked as a cashier at the local grocery store. She smiled at customers, but inside, she always doubted herself. She worried that people saw her as weak and unimportant, so she rarely spoke up at work meetings. When her boss offered her a better position, the words, "I'm not good enough," played in her mind, and she said no without even thinking. At home, Sarah was quiet, too. She lived alone in a small apartment, decorated with old family photos and soft, warm lights. Even when friends called her out for dinner, Sarah often said she was busy, though she was just nervous about not fitting in. On weekends, she would watch movies and dream about a braver life, but something always held her back. Her world felt small and safe, but Sarah was not happy. She felt stuck in one place, unable to move forward. Still, somewhere deep inside, she wished for a new start and asked herself, "Can I ever feel different?" Hope was small but still alive, like a tiny light in her heart. One cold Monday morning, Sarah walked to work feeling tired and gray. The outside world was cloudy, and so was her mind. As she placed milk cartons on the shelf, her friend Kevin came by and handed her a small piece of paper. Kevin smiled and said, "Read this, Sarah. I saw it in a magazine and thought of you." Sarah nodded shyly, not sure she wanted very much attention. Yet, during her short break, she unfolded the note. The words were simple and clear: "You can become more than you think. Don't let doubt hold you back." At first, Sarah didn't believe the note. It seemed meant for someone much braver and smarter. Still, she read the line over and over, feeling a small spark inside. For the first time, Sarah wondered if maybe she could change, too. That afternoon, she caught herself looking at things differently. A mother smiled at her from the checkout line, and Sarah smiled back, wondering why it felt nicer than usual. She remembered the words on the note all day, surprised by how they stayed in her mind. When her shift ended, Sarah walked home slowly, looking at the people around her. There was a park down the street where children were playing. Each laugh and shout made her think about her childhood, about times when she was brave and did not worry so much. That night, Sarah felt restless. She sat at her table with dinner, looking at the motivational note again and again. "What if I try?" she whispered to herself. "What if I stop letting doubt be the boss?" She knew change would not be simple. The next morning, she tried something new. Instead of hiding during breaks, she sat with her co-workers and listened to their stories. Her heart beat fast, and her hands felt cold, but Sarah tried to say something small. She made a little joke. The others looked at her, then laughed, and soon she was laughing, too. It was a small thing, but in that moment, Sarah felt different. She was proud. Still, she worried inside that maybe this confident feeling would not last. As more days passed, Sarah paid attention to her feelings. Some customers were rude, and her self-doubt returned. Part of her wanted to give up trying. She wondered if maybe she was being silly. Yet every time she felt low, Sarah remembered the simple words on her friend's note. She put the paper inside her wallet, and whenever she felt fear or sadness, she touched it and breathed slowly. This tiny habit helped her more than she expected. Sometimes, Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror at night and practiced saying something nice to herself, though it was hard not to laugh. Curling up with a book or writing short lines in her journal, she tried to remind herself that maybe, just maybe, the world was not as negative as she always believed. Some little voice inside whispered, "Keep going, you might surprise yourself." And though Sarah's fears were still strong, hope had become just a little bigger than before. One sunny afternoon, Sarah saw a flyer on the wall near the store. It said, "Join our community storytelling night. All are welcome to speak." Her heart beat quickly as she read those words. At first, Sarah wanted to turn away and forget she ever saw the flyer. The idea of speaking in front of others made her very nervous. Still, the small note from Kevin and the hope inside her pushed her to think, what if I try this? The more she looked at the flyer, the more she imagined herself standing in front of a friendly crowd, telling her story. That evening, Sarah went home and sat at her kitchen table. She wrote, crossed out lines, then started again. She wrote about the time she learned to ride a bike when she was young, and how she felt scared but happy when she finally did it. As Sarah wrote, her hands shook, but she pushed on. She decided to sign up for the event, even though her voice trembled when she spoke to the event organizer on the phone. They told her she could speak for just 3 minutes. This small choice felt like a big jump, but Sarah reminded herself, everyone started small. No one is perfect. During the days before the event, Sarah practiced her story at home, standing in front of the mirror or talking to an empty room. Sometimes she laughed at how afraid she sounded. Other times, the doubts grew loud in her mind again. You're not a good speaker. No one will listen, the voice inside her said. She remembered her old feelings, like being left out or too shy to share her thoughts in a group. But every time she thought about giving up, she touched the note in her wallet and read it one more time. Each practice made her feel a bit stronger. She smiled more easily at work, said hello to new workers, and even helped train a young cashier on the register. Finally, the night of the event arrived. Sarah wore her favorite blue sweater, hoping it would give her luck. The room was full of strangers, but also some friends from work who came to support her. As she waited for her name to be called, her hands felt cold but her cheeks felt warm. When it was her turn, Sarah walked up slowly to the front. Her voice shook in the beginning, and she wanted to run away. But as she spoke about learning to ride her bike and trying even when she was afraid, she saw people smiling back at her and clapping softly. After Sarah finished, a wave of relief ran through her. Many people said she was brave for sharing her story. She could hardly believe how good she felt. For the first time in a very long time, she walked home with her head held high. That night, looking in the mirror, Sarah grinned a real, proud smile. The win was small, but it was hers, and it became the hope she needed to try again tomorrow. A few weeks after the storytelling event, Sarah's boss called her into his office at the end of a busy day. She expected to hear about schedules or paperwork. Instead, her boss smiled and said, "Sarah, we're planning a big meeting for all the store workers next Friday. I would like you to give a short speech." The words sounded loud in Sarah's ears, and for a moment, her heart stopped. She tried to speak, but worry made her throat tight. She remembered how her cheeks burned every time she stood in front of people. The thought of talking to a room full of coworkers, some friendly, some not, filled her with fear. She wanted to say no right away and run from the office, but Kevin's kind note and the memory of her small win stayed in her mind. All week, Sarah could not stop thinking about the meeting. She felt nervous whenever she remembered what she had agreed to do. Sometimes, her hands shook just from holding her coffee cup in the morning. What if I say the wrong thing? What if everyone laughs at me or thinks I'm silly? She wondered. Even at home, Sarah found it hard to relax. She spent long hours at her kitchen table writing notes on scrap paper, then crumpling them up again and again. Doubt filled her thoughts at every turn, whispering to her that she was not ready and that this moment was too big for her. Kevin noticed that Sarah was quiet. At lunch, he sat beside her and asked if she was okay. Sarah nodded, but her stomach felt tight. She told him about the meeting and her fear of making a mistake in front of everyone. Kevin put his hand on her arm and said, "Your story at the event was great, Sarah. You have more courage than you think." His kind words gave her a little hope, but the fear of failing still seemed bigger than any courage inside her. As the day of the meeting came closer, Sarah's sleep became light and restless. She would wake up in the night and rehearse her speech while sitting on the edge of her bed. Sometimes her mind felt empty, and sometimes too full. She kept practicing, even when her voice shook or her hands trembled. While folding laundry or washing the dishes, she repeated her ideas again and again, trying to fix every sentence in her mind. When she walked to work, she looked at people passing by and imagined what it would be like to speak with confidence in front of them. The night before the meeting, Sarah stood by her window, looking at the dark street outside. She felt small and unsure, just like the first days when she wanted to hide from the world. But looking at her reflection in the glass, she saw the changes in herself, the new light behind her eyes, the way she carried herself a little taller. She let out a long breath, knowing that she still felt afraid, but also that she did not want to give up. This moment was bigger than any she had faced before. It was her chance to step forward and face her greatest fear, no matter what happened tomorrow. On Friday morning, Sarah woke before her alarm rang. Her chest felt heavy, and her hands were cold. She moved slowly, worrying about every detail. What would she say? Would she forget her words? Who would laugh? As she got dressed, she chose her best shirt and brushed her hair extra carefully, telling herself she wanted to look strong, even if she didn't feel it inside. At breakfast, Sarah could hardly eat more than a few bites of toast. She read the note from Kevin again before leaving, holding it tight in her hand until her palm grew warm. Its message felt like a piece of sunlight on this hard, stormy day. At work, everyone was busy, but Sarah could feel eyes on her. The big meeting was in the afternoon, so every hour seemed longer than usual. Her fears repeated in her mind, thoughts of stuttering, or freezing in front of all those people, or saying something silly and losing everyone's respect. She did her normal work, pressing buttons and bagging groceries, but her mind was somewhere far away, trapped in a storm of worry. During her lunch break, Kevin sat with her again. He smiled and said softly, "Remember, Sarah, you only need to do your best. You don't have to be perfect." These words stuck with her even as her nerves grew. When the meeting time finally came, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest like a drum. The workers filled the staff room, chatting and laughing, but Sarah could barely notice anything except her own breathing. Then her boss stood up at the front and said, "Everyone, please welcome Sarah." It was her turn. Her legs felt like wood, but they carried her up to the front somehow. As Sarah faced the crowd, the faces blurred together. She took a deep breath, just like she practiced, and tried to remember the words she had practiced all week. Her voice shook at the start, so soft that only the first few rows could hear. She cleared her throat and reminded herself of the small wins she had made, like the time she spoke at storytelling night, or how she now smiled more at work. She looked for Kevin and saw his kind, calm face. In her head, an old voice whispered, "You are not enough, you will mess this up." But another part, a new part, echoed back Kevin's words and her hopeful note, steady and encouraging, "You can do this. Just take the next step." Sarah focused on her breathing and kept going. With every sentence, her voice got a little stronger. She remembered to stand tall and speak slowly. She looked around the room and realized, to her surprise, that people were listening. Some were even nodding or smiling, and this filled her with power. There was a moment during her speech when she forgot her next line, and her heart jumped. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it felt long and lonely. Sarah took another deep breath, smiled at the group, and admitted, "I feel nervous, but I'm still glad I'm here." The group chuckled gently, not mocking her but sharing the moment. Sarah found herself smiling for real this time. The fear didn't go away, but it shrank enough for her to finish her story. When her speech ended, the room broke into applause. Sarah felt a wave of warm relief and happiness wash over her. She stood straighter than before, meeting people's eyes with her own. In that moment, Sarah understood it wasn't about being perfect or never being afraid. It was about moving forward, step by step, sometimes shaky, sometimes strong, but always trying. As the sound of clapping filled the room, Sarah let herself believe she was truly changing, growing into someone more hopeful, brave, and ready. As Sarah stepped down from the front of the room, the sound of applause still ringing in her ears, she felt as if a heavy coat had been lifted from her shoulders. For a moment, she stood beside the door with her hands shaking, not sure whether to feel proud or just relieved that it was over. But almost right away, her boss walked over and smiled, saying, "Great job, Sarah." That took a lot of courage. Hearing these words made Sarah's heart beat faster, but this time not from fear, this time from joy. A few co-workers gathered around her, sharing gentle smiles and quiet praise. One woman, someone Sarah barely knew, touched her arm and said, "Your story was just what I needed today. Thank you." In this simple moment, Sarah understood the power of speaking out, and she began to see herself in a new light. All afternoon, her thoughts ran in circles. She replayed her words and the crowd's reactions, thinking about every moment of hesitation, every pause and breath. She realized now that making mistakes had not ruined anything. In fact, her honesty when she forgot her next line had only made others care about her story more, not less. Sarah found it hard to stop smiling, and a lightness stayed inside her. She felt changed, different from the Sarah who used to watch life from the side, doubting every skill or strength she had. After work, Kevin walked with her toward the bus stop. He grinned as he said, "See, I told you that you could do it." Sarah laughed, louder and easier than before, and thanked him for believing in her. That simple thank you meant more to her now, and as they talked she realized she was not as alone as she once felt. The kindness from others did more than break her fear, it also opened a new door for Sarah, one she wanted to keep open. At home, she wrote about the experience in her journal, filling the pages with honest lines about feeling scared but acting anyway. She wrote that doubt would not control her anymore, not when she could decide to keep moving forward, even in small steps. She wrote about hope, the soft, steady kind that grew stronger after each new challenge. While she still made mistakes and still felt fear, Sarah understood now that bravery wasn't about being fearless, but about acting in spite of the worry. She used her own story to prove to herself that she had more strength than she believed. That weekend, Sarah went to the park by herself and sat on the bench under the shade of an old oak tree. The air was bright, and children's laughter moved on the breeze. She breathed slowly, smiling to herself, letting the gentle sounds fill her heart with peace. For the first time, her dreams for the future felt real. They no longer seemed far away, but instead something she could reach if she kept trying. Sarah even decided to help with another community event, this time signing up without so much fear. She promised to keep saying yes to chances that might once have scared her. The memory of facing the crowd stayed with her, an anchor when new storms came. She kept her head a little higher now. She spoke up at team meetings, helped others speak more, and sometimes saw herself through the eyes of new friends, someone who kept going, who did not let old worries stop her from growing. With every new step, Sarah learned something important: that true confidence is not just for brave people, it grows in anyone who faces their struggle and chooses to keep going, even when it is hard. After the meeting, Sarah felt her world begin to change, even if everything around her seemed the same. At work, some things went wrong, as always. One morning, the computer at the cash register stopped working while a long line of customers waited. Before, Sarah would have panicked and felt everyone was watching her every move. Now, she took a deep breath, smiled, and calmly called for help. Some customers frowned, but Sarah kept her voice steady and did what she could. When her boss fixed the machine and thanked her for staying calm, she realized she had stayed in control. After her recent speech, small challenges did not seem so scary. She reminded herself that a mistake or a problem is not a disaster, it is a chance to learn, and she could handle it step by step. Later that week, Sarah overheard two co-workers arguing in the break room. Instead of walking away or pretending not to notice, she gently asked if they wanted help sorting things out. Her voice was quiet but sure. It felt good to try, even if her words were simple. After a short chat, the co-workers thanked her, and the mood in the break room softened. This small win filled Sarah with quiet pride. She now believed she could make a difference if she tried. Each time she faced something new, she reminded herself to stay open and patient, to not let old fears block her way. Some old habits tried to creep back. On a slow Sunday night, Sarah began to worry about the next store meeting. A voice inside her said she would make a mistake or forget something important. But now Sarah answered that voice with kindness, telling herself, "Everyone feels unsure sometimes. I will do my best, and that is enough." She remembered the cheering from her last speech and the smile she saw in her boss's eyes. These memories acted like friendly guides, helping her walk through nerves and doubts. Sarah also noticed good changes outside of work. When friends called and asked her to join them at the park or out for coffee, she said yes more often. She used to worry about what to say or do, but now she let herself join the laughter and simple talks. At one coffee shop, when her friends talked about old dreams, Sarah joined in and shared her own story about public speaking and facing fears. She was surprised at how interested the others were, and how some even admitted to feeling the same. This feeling of connection and support gave Sarah courage. She understood that everyone has hard times. Now she saw herself not just as someone nervous or hidden, but as a real part of her group. Each week, Sarah grew a little more. She kept a journal, marking down moments of bravery, like answering the phone with a smile or inviting a friend for a walk. Some days were still a struggle, and not every challenge ended well. Sometimes she lost her temper and sometimes felt a pang of self-doubt, but she no longer let these moments block her hopes. The lesson from her speech stayed in her thoughts. If she could stand in front of a crowd and speak with her real, shaking voice, she could keep going, no matter what. Through all this change, Sarah began to see that her strength did not mean she never got scared or nervous. It meant she showed up, did her best, and used hope as a quiet power every day. She finally started to trust herself and to believe that every new step, no matter how small, could build true confidence. Sarah's days soon became brighter, not just for herself but for the people around her. One afternoon at work, she noticed a young new cashier named Emily, who seemed unsure and nervous. Emily made small mistakes, dropped coins, and often looked down when speaking to customers. Sarah remembered her own days of constant worry and fear. Instead of ignoring Emily or just watching from a distance, Sarah decided to help. She went over during break and said, "I used to feel just like you. I was scared to talk or make a mistake. But I learned it gets easier, step by step." Emily looked surprised at first but smiled, comforted to know she was not alone. Sarah started sharing helpful tips with Emily, like how to take deep breaths during stressful times and how to smile when she felt afraid. She showed her simple ways to remember the steps on the register and even helped her practice friendly greetings to customers. Little by little, Emily's confidence grew when she began to face the day's challenges with a brighter attitude. Every time Sarah saw Emily smile or help someone else, she felt proud and encouraged. Helping another person was different than helping herself. It was a new and bigger kind of happiness. Outside of the store, Sarah wanted to share her story even more. She remembered the note that started everything for her and wished other people could feel the same hope. On a sunny Saturday, Sarah wrote her first post on a blog titled "Little Steps, Big Change." She wrote in simple, warm words, telling her story of self-doubt, small wins, and growing courage. She posted photos of her favorite places in her town and wrote advice for anyone struggling with confidence. To her surprise, a few people commented and thanked her, saying her story gave them hope to try something new. Encouraged, Sarah wrote more the next week, sharing how she faced new challenges and still felt nervous but acted anyway. She made short videos where she spoke about patience and the power of kindness to self. Even though the camera made her anxious at first, she focused on helping just one person feel braver. She reminded viewers and readers, "You don't have to be perfect. Each little try, each day, makes you stronger." Soon, people from different places reached out to Sarah. One woman sent her a message, saying she felt too shy to speak at work but tried after reading Sarah's story. Another teenager wrote, thanking Sarah for tips on handling school nerves. These replies made her see that sharing her lessons was as important as learning them. Sarah noticed her own voice becoming more confident and true with every message she sent. It felt good to know pain and struggle could become light for someone else. Sarah also joined a community group, helping plan events and talk at meetings. She was not always the loudest or boldest, but people listened and often turned to her for advice. She spoke honestly, met mistakes with gentle words, and encouraged others to help one another. Every time she helped somebody, Sarah thought about her first scared days and felt gratitude for the journey. Reflecting on all she had learned, Sarah realized she could still grow, but the biggest change was inside her. She now believed she could face the world, and she could give hope to others, one kind act or story at a time. Her days were still full of troubles and worries sometimes, but now she approached them with steady courage and a heart ready to lift up those who needed it most. Sarah sat at her small kitchen table on a Sunday evening, enjoying a quiet moment after a busy week. The light outside was soft, and the voices of children playing in the street drifted through her window. Looking around her apartment, filled now with more plants, new books, and fresh memories, Sarah realized she felt comfortable in her own skin. Where she once saw only the limits of her small world, she now saw the many ways she was connected, both at work and beyond. Each day, she felt more like herself, strong and open, ready to try new things instead of hiding from them. Sarah thought about all the steps she had taken, starting with her first small win at the community storytelling night, and how she had spoken up in front of her co-workers, shaking but hopeful. She remembered the long hours of worry, and the fear that almost pulled her back more than once. Now, those difficult feelings were soft echoes, important but not rulers of her life. She understood that the journey to confidence was not one great leap but a path of many little steps, some wobbly and unsure, others strong and proud. Over time, the small moments of courage built a trust within herself, teaching her that mistakes did not define her and that growth was possible through trying. At work, Sarah noticed her relationships had changed for the better. She often found herself supporting teammates and offering advice to anyone struggling. Difficult days and tricky challenges still came, broken machines, upset customers, long meetings, but Sarah handled them with greater calm. She was not perfect, and she did not need to be. When doubts visited, she would take a slow breath and remember her past successes. Even if her hands shook or she blushed while speaking, she now saw these as normal parts of learning and growing. She showed others that being nervous was something to walk through, not a reason to step back. Sarah found that helping others grew her own confidence. She kept posting her stories on her blog and made short, friendly videos sharing tips or encouragement. Each time Sarah met a coworker or a stranger who said, "Your message helped me," she felt the power of everything she had learned. More importantly, she understood that everyone's journey was different, but hope and effort made every path brighter. Sarah no longer doubted whether she belonged. She knew there would always be a place for her voice, simply because she dared to use it. One clear morning, Sarah met her friend Kevin for breakfast at a small cafe. As they talked about things they still wanted to do, Sarah felt excited for the future. She talked about ideas for new challenges she might try and how she wanted to keep helping others grow. Kevin smiled, reminding her how far she had already come. Sarah agreed. She saw now that personal growth was not a short trip but a lifelong journey, full of ups and downs and gentle lessons in each day. As Sarah cleaned up her kitchen that night, she caught her own eye in the mirror. She saw all the changes there, a brightness, a steadiness, and deep warmth. Whatever tomorrow's challenges, she knew she could greet them with a spirit of hope. The journey ahead was still unknown, but she was no longer afraid of what might come. With courage and kindness, Sarah moved forward with trust in herself, ready to meet each day and help others along the way.